Every town has a man who handles the thing no one wants to touch. In Burden Creek, that man was Cooper Tate. He buried 141 people in 19 years. Before sealing every coffin, every single one, he would lean down close to the body and whisper something. The town assumed it was a prayer. They were wrong. In October of 1887, Cooper Tate sat down on the front step of his funeral home and refused to bury anyone else. He gave no reason. Within the week, the dying in Burden Creek stopped dying. Not recovered, not healed. Stopped dying. Cooper Tate arrived in Burden Creek in the spring of 1870. No one hired him. No one sent for him. He appeared with a black bag and a set of tools. The town doctor would later describe them as more precise than anything he had seen east of St. Louis. He opened the building at the north end of town, cleaned it, hung no sign for 3 days. On the 4th day, a man died of a snake bite. Cooper Tate was at the family's door. Before noon, in 19 years, he was never late to a death. He would sometimes arrive before the family had sent for him. When asked how he knew, he would look at the person who asked, and then look at the ground and say nothing. The whisper. He did it with the first body he ever prepared. In Burden Creek, he did it with the last. Always the same lean. Always the same proximity. Lips close to the ear of the dead. It was as though the dead could still hear. And what he was saying required that kind of closeness. Always the same duration, 6 seconds, give or take. You could count it if you were watching. Several people did watch. Over the years, from doorways, from parlor chairs, from behind cracked doors, no one could hear what he said. He never spoke above a breath. Once, only once, a child asked him what he whispered. Children ask things adults have learned not to. Cooper Tate looked at the child for a long moment. Then he said, in the same voice he used for everything, quiet, unhurried, carrying the specific weight of a man who has thought carefully before speaking. I tell them to stay where they are put. The child did not ask anything else. No one who heard that answer ever repeated it. While Cooper Tate was still in town, Jacob Harlan died on a Tuesday. He was 51. He ran the hardware store. He was not a remarkable man in any direction, which was why his death was manageable, a thing the town knew how to absorb. His wife went to Cooper Tate the same morning. Cooper Tate was sitting on his front step, not reading, not working, sitting, hands on his knees, looking at the ground directly in front of his boots. The widow Harlan told him her husband had passed. Cooper Tate said he was aware. She said she needed arrangements made. He said, not yet. She waited for an explanation. None came. She told people later that what disturbed her most was not the refusal. It was the way he said, not yet. The way you say it when you're waiting for something you know is coming and the timing is not right. And patience is the only thing left to do. Sheriff Creel came 3 times. Over 4 days, the answers were all variations of the same shape. The ground is not ready. Something changed. You would not understand what I found. On the 5th day, the town doctor, a man named Aldous Webb, went to see Cooper Tate himself. He was inside the funeral home. For 9 minutes, He came out looking like a man who had walked into a room and found it was occupied by something that had no business being there. He went home. He stayed there 2 days. When Creel finally got him to speak, Webb said only this. He showed me where he had been digging, and he showed me what he found. And I will tell you this, Sheriff, whatever is down there, it knew I was looking at it. 3 weeks after Cooper Tate refused to bury Jacob Harlan, old Tom Reyes should have died. His lungs had been failing since spring. Dr. Webb had known for months the sounds inside Tom's chest, the rattle, the catch, the specific exhaustion of organs giving up. It told a story that only moved in one direction. Tom Reyes did not die. He did not recover either. He woke every morning. He breathed. He stared at the ceiling above his bed with the expression of a man waiting for a train that refuses to arrive. He could not eat. He could not drink. He could barely speak. He woke every morning anyway. Dr. Webb wrote in his private journal, found 40 years later, in a county records box, a single sentence that has been copied and recopied and never satisfactorily explained. These people are not being kept alive. They are being kept. The distinction matters in ways I am not equipped to describe. The cook girl, 7 years old, with a fever that had been burning for 10 days, did not die either. The fever remained. She lay in it. But she woke every morning and stared and did not speak and did not die. And her mother sat beside her until the mother stopped speaking, too. A man named Petrie fell from his horse onto rock-hard Texas ground. He fell in a way that no man survives. Petrie survived. He sat at the saloon bar every night after that. He ordered the same drink. He looked at it without drinking it. When people spoke to him, he would say their names correctly. He knew everyone, but his eyes were the eyes of a painting, registering, not receiving. Once, and only once, someone heard Tom Reyes say something from his sickbed. His wife pressed her ear close. She could barely make it out. 3 words, "Put me down." She told herself he was delirious. She told everyone else the same. But the people who heard about it and thought about it too long noticed something. Put me down is not what a dying man says. It is what something says when it knows it is being held. On the 41st day, Sheriff Creel stopped asking Cooper Tate for explanations. He asked him instead a different question. What does it want? And Cooper Tate, for the first time since the refusal, looked up from the ground. He told Creel this. 6 weeks earlier, digging a routine grave in the northeast corner. The corner where the soil had always been darker, always softer, always colder than the rest of the cemetery. His shovel struck something at 3 feet down. Not rock, not wood. He described the sound it made as a drum, a sound that did not travel through the air. It traveled through the ground in all directions at once, and you felt it in the soles of your feet before you heard it at all. He dug wider. He found the edge of it, the shape of it. He did not describe what it was. He said only, "It isn't the bodies it wants. It never was." Creel asked him what it did want. Cooper Tate looked at the ground for a long time. Then he said, "It wants what the bodies carried down to it, what I put into the ground with every burial, and it wants the man who has been bringing it." Creel asked him what he meant. Cooper Tate stood up, picked up his shovel. He walked toward the northeast corner of the cemetery. Creel did not follow. He said later he did not know why he didn't follow. He said it was as though his feet understood something his mind hadn't yet caught up to, that it would not have been right to watch. At 2 a.m. on the 42nd day, Tom Ray's exhaled once, long, complete, and final, and died in his bed. The cook girl's fever broke. She opened her eyes, turned her head, and asked for her mother. Petrie looked at the drink in front of him, picked it up, put it down, and walked home. By morning, the dying were dead or healing. The threshold was closed. In the northeast corner of the Burden Creek Cemetery, there were 2 fresh mounds. Not one. 2. One bore a name, Tom Reyes, aged 74. The other had no name, just a rough-cut plank, driven into the earth. No date, no inscription. The wood looked freshly cut. The surrounding soil was darker than any ground in the cemetery, darker than it had any right to be. Cooper Tate was never seen again. His tools were gone. His ledger was gone. His black bag was gone. There was no body in the funeral home. On his front step, weighted down by a flat stone, was a single sheet of paper, 3 sentences. What I whispered was not a prayer. Do not bury anyone in the northeast corner. Not for any reason. Not for any grief. Whatever it tells you, the second grave is for, it is lying. Burden Creek was abandoned 11 years later. The official records cite drought, failed economy, the railroad choosing a different route. They do not record that in those 11 years, no one dug in the northeast corner. They do not record that 3 men separately attempted to, once out of curiosity, once in grief, once for a reason no one could account for, and that all 3 stopped digging at a specific depth and left town without explanation within the week. They do not record what the last family out of Burden Creek told the county land clerk. The Aldridge family, 12 people. Their youngest daughter was 9 years old. She said the night before they left, she heard something beneath the floor of their house. Not a sound exactly, a rhythm, like something being repeated. When pressed, the girl said it sounded like someone saying the same thing over and over, quietly, the way you would say something close to someone's ear. She said she could almost make out the words. 6. She counted 6 seconds each time. No one built on the land where Burden Creek stood. Botanists who surveyed the region in 1954 noted the soil in the northeast corner, and a footnote no one reads. Rich soil. Dense, unnaturally dark. Nothing grows in it. Nothing placed in it decomposes. Whatever goes in does not change. It simply stays. Sheriff Creel moved to a different county in the spring of 1888. He never spoke about what Cooper Tate told him in that room. He carried it the same way Cooper Tate had carried the whisper. Close, below hearing, said only once to the right ear. He is buried in a town called Marfine, 200 miles from Burden Creek, southeast corner of the cemetery. He was very specific about that.